Is this my best aquarium? Well, many of you guys seem to think so. But what is it? Well, technically this is a brackish water aquarium. Somewhere in between freshwater as well as saltwater, a mixture of two essentially. You guys will remember it was about a little more than a year ago we got the archer fish. We originally got them for the 2,000-gallon aquarium, and eventually I thought, why don't we just dedicate an aquarium to a brackish water tank? Simply because it's not that common. I've always wanted to do it, and there's other fish that I would love to keep that would make absolute sense with the archers, and those include the scats as well as the monos. Now, we got those guys a little more than 2 months ago, and after quarantine, we added them to this aquarium. Now, in the last video, we did a complete walkthrough and update of the Oscar aquarium, including the filtration, the lighting, everything that I thought you guys needed to know about that tank, and almost everything is the same on this aquarium, besides how I do my water changes. Now, all aquariums suffer from water evaporation. Eventually the water level will drop, and that's simply due, like I said, to evaporation. But what happens on a brackish water or even a saltwater aquarium? Water does still evaporate, but only the water. It leaves everything behind, all the minerals and salts, which means as the water is evaporating, the tank is getting saltier and saltier. The salinity continues to rise because as the water evaporates, it's leaving all those salts behind. So of course we want to monitor the water level and top off with fresh water, not brackish water and not salt water. If we continue to add salt water, this is just going to get more and more and more salty, and we don't want that. We want to control that salinity. As for a water change, it's a little cumbersome and I'll admit annoying. However, because I have a saltwater aquarium already, it's kind of simple for me to just do my water changes with more diluted salt. I take a 55-gallon barrel and I mix the salinity in that to what I need this brackish water aquarium to be. And right now it's at 1.008, and that's about as high as I want it to be right now. When we first added the fish, I believe it was 1.004, and over the last month or so, we've slowly increased the salinity. Mind you, in a full saltwater aquarium, the salinity is 1.025 or 22, 23, 24, 25. You get the idea. Way more saltier. So I do everything the same. I remove the sponge, I clean it, I drain some of the water, and I simply pump the water that I've already mixed. And I already did the water changes yesterday, so I'm not going to do another one today for today's video, but you get the idea. I've shown you this a million times. I mix it in a 55-gallon barrel, and I simply pump that fresh brackish water back up to the aquarium. And that's essentially it. Now, the downside to a brackish water aquarium is it does have that added expense of having to buy salt, but you don't need nearly as much as a saltwater aquarium. But a brackish water tank certainly does open up the doors and to such a wide variety and array of fish that you might not have ever kept before. And it is sort of like a stepping stone to saltwater. With that said, everybody's doing absolutely fantastic in this aquarium. They're all growing, they're all getting nice and fat. Some of them aren't doing as well as others, but that's the case when you have like 100 fish. You're gonna have, 5%, 10% that's not as healthy as everybody else, unless you wanna start overfeeding the tank and polluting it. A lot of the times these guys will bounce back. We have had 0 losses in this tank so far. The interesting part about this aquarium is the fish's behavior. It's like the perfectly balanced tank. We always want activity on all levels, top level, middle level, bottom level. And when we have a freshwater aquarium, maybe we'll do some hatchet fish up top, maybe some tetras in the middle, Corydoras on bottom. But what do you do for a saltwater tank? Personally, I thought everybody was going to occupy the top of the tank. Everybody's hungry. This is a great tank to feed, which we're going to do in a second. The archer fish remain at the top almost exclusively. The top 20% is where they stay. In between the top 20 and the middle, or in the bottom 20, the monos typically occupy. However, they kind of go wherever they want, which is ideal because when they are filtering out throughout the bottom of the aquarium, or sorry, the middle of the tank, when they are swimming throughout the middle of it, it's almost like they're inviting everybody else to as well, and they kind of all blend. The scats, I find, spend almost all of their time at the bottom half. So when I show you clips and montages of this tank, it's always incredibly active, and the tank is always filled with fish. They're not really shoaling, they're not really schooling. They kind of do stick together, sorta, kinda. Mostly the archers. Everybody else just occupies everywhere else. As for feeding, luckily these guys all have the same diet requirements. The archers as well as the monos are very similar, except their mouth sizes are incredibly different. The archer has a big gaping jaw bridge of a mouth, whereas the mono is closer to like an angelfish or a discus, whereas the scats have a medium-sized mouth for their body, and it gets bigger and bigger with time. I'm not worried about the scats and what they'll eat. They will eat anything. And I have found they are the perfect fish for hair algae, which is incredibly difficult to find a fish that will actually devour it. But within 2 days, they ate everything. Now, one of the things I was really proud of at one point was the fact that I started to be able to grow algae, and it was looking more and more natural until I added the scats, and they decimated the algae within a couple of days. And I'm telling you, I had hair algae just stringing everywhere, and I like the look of it. But the scats like the taste of it more than I like the look of it. So with a variety of fish in here, and you're going to see this repetitively, especially with the 2000, since it's a community aquarium with so many different size fish and so many different diet requirements, what do? Well, you guys know I mix up my own food. What do you see in here? A little bit of everything. Big pellets, little pellets, tiny little floating sticks. We got floating, sinking. We have a little bit of everything in here, and it's absolutely perfect for community aquariums. I highly suggest, instead of having a ton of different types of foods and opening up all these bags, just mix it up. If you have a community aquarium, everybody's going to eat it. Just don't overfeed, because it's super easy to overfeed on this stuff. Now, the archers do tend to be a top feeding fish, and if you don't know where your fish prefers to eat, just look at the shape of their mouths. Is it pointing upwards? Self-explanatory, isn't it? Is it pointing forwards? They're probably a mid-water feeder, or they could peck off the bottom. And the mouths that point forward are typically the easiest types of fish to feed, whereas the upwards pointed mouths are the second most difficult, because you definitely need a floating fish. And this isn't difficult, it's just... and then you have the bottom feeders, which you have to get past everybody to get to the bottom feeders, and you risk overfeeding that way. Me, I give everybody a little bit of everything. I don't worry about the scats. They will eat anything. The monos do need a smaller pellet, whereas the archers do prefer the floating stuff and something a little bigger and more wholesome. Now let's feed them. A highly active fish. If I leave the top off, you guys are waiting for the archers to do target practice and whatnot. I'm not sure at this point if it's going to be possible with everybody in there. But if I leave the top off and I'm over there editing, it's not unlike them to literally spit at me. I'm talking the water goes from here all the way over to my chair where I'm editing, and I get it all over the desk, all over me. It's not a bunch, but it's kind of funny. And then I know I got to feed them. They're like cats. They're annoying when they're hungry. Very aggressive feeders though. A very fun tank to feed. I mean, look. This is why I put in a bunch of different sizes all at once. They're just going ballistic over it. Now, if I did only floating sticks, it gets a little more wild than this. But as you can see, everything I said, archers prefer the floating stuff, but they will eat during from the middle of the tank and or even go down closer to the bottom, but they rarely pick anything off. The monos are going after the smaller diameter pellets, whereas the scats, they're eating the big ones, they're eating the little ones. They do not care so long as they're eating. And they will eat. And they will eat, and they will eat, and they will eat. They are the Oscar fish of the brackish water world. Just a fun tank to sit here and look at, a fun tank to feed. These fish are not skittish at all, unless of course I put my hands in the tank or something like that. But for the most part, this tank is in competition for being my favorite aquarium. However, you guys know time and time again, I've said it. This rendition of the gallery, every aquarium is in competition with me. Every time I set one of these tanks up, I want it to be my new favorite aquarium. And historically, every new aquarium has technically been my favorite tank. But I mean, come on, the Oscar aquarium, this is, and I am a little biased, but my favorite Oscar aquarium of all time. I've never had a shoal, and it's just so much different and so much rewarding. The brackish water aquarium, I could never have imagined having these fish at one point, because I would have had to do something so specific like brackish water and mix it, and it seems so unobtainable at one point, but I wanted something original and different and new. So look at, it's just gorgeous. And then we have a bunch of fake plants at the bottom. This does help the archerfish feel more secure. They do like to have plants in the tank. I will say that. There's not a whole lot more to them besides making sure they don't spit at you. The piranha tank. I mean, this is not your average common piranha aquarium, but it's mine and I love it. When I look at this tank, it's my favorite. When I stand in front of it, no tank competes with it. When I stand in front of that tank, it's my favorite, and now no tank competes with that one. Same with the Oscars, as well as the Lake Tanganyika Aquarium. I will admit, when I'm ranking my personal tanks of which one's my favorite and which one's not, I do not include the Asian arowana. That's not fair. And I do not talk about my Stingray Aquarium because that's also not fair. In my heart, nothing competes with them. Yeah, no, this is my favorite tank. Like I said, I mean, if you stand, and I wish you guys could come here with me, and I'm trying to do these updates as every aquarium, just focus on each tank just to show you the beauty and the splendor and the fascinating things about them. And just a general update. It's so difficult for me to even focus on anything educational when I'm standing in front of this. I gotta try to remember things, but I can't because aquariums are having the effect on me that we all love. We just get lost in them. And for a moment in time, nothing else matters. I said aquarium so many times in this video. I think I say the word aquarium, to be fair, 20 to 30 times per day. And I'm being fair. I could say, oh, I say it 100 because I'm the king of DIY. No, 20 to 30. How many times do you say out loud the word aquarium? Let me know in the comment section below. I also want to know, and I only have a couple questions. Before we get to that, you got to see this. This aquarium is going to get its own update at some point, but I want you to see something. See all this algae? I removed all plants and began allowing the algae to simply flourish and literally cover every piece of wood. And isn't that gorgeous? Some people will hate it, some people will call it disgusting, some people will say they don't like algae in their tanks, etc., 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 but I'm not saying what everybody else likes. I'm saying that I find it absolutely beautiful. Nitrates in this aquarium are non-existent for the most part, phosphates, etc. The algae is taking care of it, and the fish are simply flourishing. Just absolute beautiful tank, so unique, so different. You know what? This is, in my opinion, a planted tank. Well, an algae tank. And when I do look at it, it becomes my favorite aquarium. Which brings me to my last question. Out of all the aquariums out here, what is your favorite aquarium? I wonder if it's everybody's, and the top voted comment will do an update on that aquarium here shortly. I'd also like to know, I lied, this is the last question. What is your personal favorite aquarium that you have right now? Describe it in the comment section below so I can steal your ideas. I hope you guys like this update. I just really enjoy this aquarium. We just recently added these fish short period of time ago, so there's not a whole lot to kind of update and talk about, but I am working on something really special about these fish in this tank and the others. So if you're not subscribed to this channel yet and you enjoy these types of videos, make sure you subscribe or you're gonna miss them.